Well, welcome. Today is the start of our 2025 Education Summit for Wellbeing Australia, and we are thrilled to have you with us. This week, we're undertaking a series of conversations all around what's critical to education, but also leadership across the board. So, personal leadership through to public leadership in education and other sectors, working with youth, working with empowering others, working with educating and developing other people. So, we really welcome you today. Before we start, I just want to acknowledge the traditional landowners. I'm dialing in from Gadigal land here. We are very grateful to the Aboriginal community for leading the way around bringing together community sharing, learning from one another, and connecting with nature. And so we thank the Aboriginal community for teaching us these strategies and thoughts, but also we respect and acknowledge all elders past, present, and emerging. So today's session is a session all around educational leadership. It kicks off our summit. As we know, educational leadership or leadership in all its forms sets the tone for the rest of the organisation. It's probably the biggest bugbear we get from people who are saying that wellbeing is struggling within their organisation. They feel that the culture and the tone is not set by the leaders, and so the wellbeing is being impacted from that space. Leading in all spaces is a tricky one in the current dynamic, but certainly in the educational space, the media is really highlighting the difficulties around the pressures that are coming into the sector. Those pressures include those from parent populations, from staffing populations, from a governance perspective, but also from those outside factors that we really can't control. So since the pandemic, education changed dramatically, and what was expected of leaders and what was fulfilling leaders also changed dramatically during that period. So just to give some context to you lovely people in the room, I'm Kathryn Taylor. I'm the chair of Wellbeing Australia, and I've been on the board for many years. I also work in the education sector, empowering, educating, and strategically organising leadership teams, working through strategic planning for schools and organisations aligned to education, and so working end to end with disengaged through to empowered staff. So this is a topic very, very important to me. So just working through in terms of Mari. Mari, would you like to introduce yourself to everybody?
Hello, everyone. Well, this is the surprise, being on the front end this morning instead of just looking after the back end. So I'm also on the board of Wellbeing Australia. I'm a HR consultant, do a lot of training as well, but I also work in the university sector. So I'm also an adjunct lecturer that uses my skills working with students both here domestically as well as internationally for the university I work for. Very interested in the education space because I think it's pivotal for us to look after the people who look after our people and help, empower our young people to have a thirst for learning and just encourage them all the time to just keep pushing on and not lose hope, when things are a little bit challenging.
Absolutely. And I think you touch on a really important point there, Murray, because so much of educational leadership is coming back to what is that centre, what are we there for, which is young people. Before we go into any more detail, can I just ask everyone in the room just to share in the chat or in the Q&A any questions you have, but in the chat, can you just share with us, why have you joined today? What do you want to get from us? We're here for you. Our summit series is all about answering your questions and knowing what's important to you. So if you want to pop into the chat, what was it that drove you? What was the element of this topic around leadership, performance, people, and purpose? And what was it that was making you think what was happening within the educational space and sector? So just going back to what you said, and Murray, there's a lot in the news at the moment around tertiary institutions. You said you're in the uni sector, and around that leadership piece. So that quandary, that challenge between I'm here for the youth, but I'm here for the staff. So what do you sort of think around that double-edged space? Because exactly as you said, so many of us are here for the students. That's what drove us through into the space.
Yeah, I think it's a real challenge because sometimes we can be conflicted about what we think would be best for the students, but it doesn't align with the direction that we're being given by our organisation. And that can be a real challenge. And I think it's really important that we keep in sight the purpose, like the long term and not just the short term focusing on too many things short term. And I think, you know, the organisations aren't going to do anything that works against the young people. And sometimes we just might have to be a little bit more flexible about how we settle in ourselves that it's okay to do things a certain way. I think it's really important that we don't create further stress where there is no need to.
Yeah. That's a big factor at the moment, because there are so many stress factors. And I think we're at a point in time where people are more emotionally fatigued and mentally fatigued than they've ever been. So when you look at that leadership piece, when you're already starting with a fatigue model, we've got higher volumes of health incidents and issues. We've got higher volumes of physical and aggressive violence in schools than we ever have before. These are quite stress-inducing situations, right? So that connection with purpose is such a critical one, but can be a bit of a challenge, because it's what drove me, but it's also what's probably not really the core of my role. I know I worked with a network in regional New South Wales of educational leaders, and we actually mapped them from a motivational maps point of view. And their highest driver was purpose and meaning. Their least satisfied piece was purpose and meaning. They kept saying, because I've gone into leadership, my role is now administration. I'm dealing with fires, I'm dealing with issues, I'm dealing with dissatisfied people, staff, you know, parents, families, organizational sort of perspectives, but none of it is fulfilling where I actually came from. And so this emptiness was sort of what they were sharing with me, which is terrible. Absolutely terrible in that role.
Yeah, and we find that quite a lot, actually, that we take our best of the best and then we promote them into leadership, and it's a different skill set. And I think this is where the problem sort of is happening for a lot of us. Is we love teaching, we love being there for the students, and we just love seeing them kick goals and everything. But all of a sudden we have a different skill set, and we might be first year leader, not 20 years in education. We're actually first year in leadership. And I think that's where the struggle is getting the strategies and the skills to be able to do that well and lead adults, not leading young people. So
great comment. So what's that shift? What are the skills that we really need if we're talking about leading adults and transitioning from that? Because I know a lot of aspiring leaders are in the room at the moment. What would you say are the differentiators? Because I often think it's not necessarily the skill, but it's how we do the skill. So instead of channeling it through the classroom, I really have to evolve and adapt what I'm doing to be able to connect with an adult population that often I was part of as a peer.
That's
right?
Yeah.
What do you think are the skills that we really need to zone into to connect with those people?
Yeah, I think it's really important that understanding your people and just not expecting them to be like you were as a teacher, because not everyone behind us is the same as what we were. You know, particularly if we supported our leader, we may not have that person behind us that supports us as well. So I think changing your expectations around that, you know, understanding, where people are at, having a vision. I think it's really important that you have a vision for your people, that you be transparent, you know, as much as you can be transparent for your people. I think it's really important that you give people lots of opportunity to bring what they want to bring to the table. You know, you may have an idea on how you might want something rolled out, but be the last one to speak rather than the first one to speak. And empower your people to come with their problems by all means, but also ask them to come with the solution. And it may not be the best one, but at least it's a start, which really encourages growth for people, encourage for people to be able to share, well, I thought it might be this thing, you know, that might help us, you know. So some of those sort of very, very simple strategies can be helpful.
That's so cool, aren't they? They're so cool. And that bringing to the table those solutions, I'm heard then. So I'm valued for those skills. So if we look at the Gallup data around what really connects and empowers people in an educational context, but in all organizations, the first founding piece is actually understanding and respecting those talents and skills that I have in the room, right?
Yeah.
So being able to see and feel that my leader sees the skills that I have and the talents that I have.
Yeah.
Second to that, it's then using those
Yeah,
skills. There's
that's
nothing
right.
more frustrating than thinking, my God, I'm such a great communicator, I'm such a great problem solver, I'm, really great at persuading and including people in this discussion that we're having, but you're not allowing me to do any of that. And the other piece is being able to stretch people. And I think what we're hearing, and that was those three elements were so key. What we're hearing from education is so often we're stuck in the fire that we're not getting to look up and look out. So we're not looking to our people to think, what do they bring to the table? But potentially we're not also looking to our people to say, what solutions can you think? Let's pause for a minute. Let's breathe. Let's think through. So just pulling apart what you said there, definitely that empowering people. Communication is such a tricky one because if you look, like Pete's dialing in from the Department of Education, that's a massive organisation. So the communication that happens at the coal face, for want of a better expression, within our school is very, very separate to what's happening from the organisational level. So the communication elements, there's only so much within our power, but I feel like communication is so key to all of us. It's the thing that burns people, right? If I don't know what's happening, I'm not being heard, I'm not being asked, I've shared, it's not being applied, there's no to and fro. What do you think around that communication piece for leaders?
Yeah, I think what's really important is, particularly if people share something and you don't see a change, and because change management isn't something that happens every now and then, we're actually continually changing. Organisations have to continually change to keep up with the pace of how things are moving for us. And I think that communication as a leader back is if someone suggests something, and you're not going to go with it for 5 different reasons, whatever, please make sure that you go back to them and say, look, here was one of the suggestions, but we couldn't go that way because of, like, it takes another 2 minutes to let people know why you can't go that way at this moment. Because I think in the communication space, it's not just about you directing and going, here's what I expect, this is what it looks like. It's actually reciprocal because we want to be interdependent. We want to use each other's gifts and talents. Because we're not going to see everything. People are going to bring something else that we don't see. I always say hire the weird one, hire that person that you think's really different to you because they're going to have a different angle, So I think making sure that you always transfer the information back to people, particularly if you're not going to follow their suggestion.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that being able to hire or invite that person who thinks differently to you means you have to allow yourself to be vulnerable.
That's
You have
right.
to allow yourself to go, oh, maybe I've not seen this the right way. Maybe their perspective is different to mine. And so I need to listen to this. And I think that's something I hear a lot from education. We have super users across institutions. And this is definitely what's in the media about that tertiary institution. The communication has not been aligned to the needs of the organisation. So it was just poor strategic sort of rollout from that piece, and decision-making potentially. But that piece of being able to say, this is what we're really needing and this is where we're really wanting to go through and bringing those pieces together. It's far more complicated if I'm such a strong believer that I know everything. Whereas if I'm coming with going, actually, you're in the operations piece, you understand the infrastructure of this school much better than I do. You're in the classroom with these students that we've been challenged by. You're in the classroom with the kids that are really thriving. You've actually been with us for a number of years in this role, and you've got this beautiful longevity of perspective. If we can pull that knowledge, and I think that's the real talent of strong leaders now, how I can pull the talent that is around me and really authentically listen and be vulnerable to go, maybe I don't know everything, then I'm in a better space to have those options.
Yeah, definitely agree. And the other piece is around accountability, is that we have an accountability not only to the organisation, or to the school or the educational institution we're working in, but we have an accountability to each other. And I think that's
Yes.
really important, that as a leader, we talk team, and we talk that we all have different roles to play, but we have an accountability to each other to ensure that we get the job done. And, you know, one of the factors for a top performing team, because as leaders, we're leading teams, is to have a remit, so that we want to ensure that we are able to meet the remit that we have, which will be around our young people and taking them through successfully. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that links back to your initial comment about vision. That's something that I feel a lot of educators don't feel is there. Where are we going? What is the point of what we're doing? So yes, we know we're there for the young people, but that vision of where is our organization positioned? What is our community need? And how can we thrive, rather than measuring against such stagnant data that so many of us are frustrated by? What is that vision and the values associated with that to be able to set us up for success? So that vision piece was really interesting to hear you say that's earlier, because I feel that is one that a lot of leaders don't feel they have a voice in. Do you think that?
Yeah, I think that's really important. And you also tapping on values. And sometimes I think, you know, your organization will have a set of values, but there's nothing to stop you and your team having a set of your own values. What are the values that we would like to stand by? And that's a really nice way to engage your people in having a conversation about what are those things that are so important to you that we don't want to cross with each other. You know, so, you know, even just and I know it's frantic, and I know there's meeting, but even 5 minutes before a meeting, hey, what's really important to you? Because that's a value that we as a team can stand by and live by for you, and that you live by mine.
And those values underpin the strategic plan, right? So I've been doing a lot of work in the last few years with various schools in different sectors around their strategic planning. And it's been fascinating to see how schools go about it, because quite a lot of schools, the board determines the strategic plan, the executive are informed, or, you know, party to a degree, and then it stops there. Yet the plan itself and the vision for the school is being lived and achieved through so many more people than that. And so if I don't have a vision of why we're doing that, and you're telling me we're putting in a new system, or we're changing the pedagogy here, or we're implementing new subjects there, or now we've got these behavior strategies, whatever it might be, well, where is that coming from, and how do I understand where it is? And I think it sort of loops back to that communication and that really bringing your people in. But I think the vision piece around the strategy is potentially, from a commercial versus education point of view, utilized so differently. Whereas in commercial organizations, everything goes back to the strategy. The strategy is all about our audience, our customer demographic, how we're meeting their needs, where we're going from there. Yet so much of what's put on education in all sectors is around academic measurements that, yes, are required, but are only achieved through genuine engagement in the performance and the satisfaction of our actual staff, you know, how they're working through.
Yeah, that's true. And I think, you know, education and commercial sectors are totally different around how they use strategic plans. And, you know, and particularly in education, you know, you're not always looking to go, you know, what is that number, that, you know, what are those deliverables and the numbers? You're just told this is what you need to do. You're spending a lot of time in leadership putting out fires with staff, and, you know, and I think it's hard because around that purpose piece, you know, you get into education because of, you know, the people that you want to teach and that environment. But then as you go into leadership, you're moving further and further away from that. And I think that's a bit, you know, if you can look for opportunities maybe to engage a little bit in your day in some of the stuff that you love, if you can find some opportunities to do that as well, you know, or in the week, if you can, maybe if you can still have a bit of a teaching load, I think that can help as well. I know somebody who was a deputy principal and hated being in the office and used to always put his hand up for playground duty so he could go out and spend time with the kids and not just see the kids that were having a bit of a, bad day. So,
Great, isn't it?
yeah, so maybe looking for some opportunities
Connecting
back there,
across.
connecting back, yeah.
Just a quick message. Peter has messaged through. Thank you, Peter. I feel so bad for Peter because his technology has not worked. For everyone who's dialed in for Peter, we will still speak to Peter. We will record the session and we will share it with you. So you're not missing Peter's amazing content as well. But we will share back it. Zoom is being Zoom. That's very much where it's at. That going out into playground duty is a really interesting one, because when that shift came through that they wanted leaders back in classrooms, to me, that was another example of coming across as very authoritarian rather than coming across from the purpose of why we were there.
Yeah, that's right.
Whereas most of the principals, the deputies, the execs that I'm working with love being with the young people. That's what fills them. And so all that piece of whatever it is, whether it's a regular class or not, whether it's being in playground duty, whether it's being able to teach a one-off programs, different things like that, actually really, really critical to people. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so I wanted to sort of call out the elephant in the room around wellbeing, because to me, I think something that we really have to advocate and acknowledge, and sort of Wellbeing Australia, we're all about calling out the elephant and advocating for what's important. The unsaid thing around wellbeing is very much that an organisation's wellbeing is only as strong as its staff's wellbeing. And so if we are not valuing and connecting and facilitating meaningful, positive and active wellbeing programs, then the wellbeing of our staff will not be there and the disengagement will increase. If the disengagement increases, then we're going to have behavioural issues with staff. We're going to have with students, we're going to have poor retention in staff. We're going to have high absenteeism. So the core of where it comes from, and certainly, Murray, what we see from the data set around wellbeing, is everything comes back to that root. So that the programming within educational organisations from early childhood through to tertiary must be genuine and robust wellbeing programs, not a wellbeing day. There's nothing more offensive to people than a wellbeing day, because you're suggesting their wellbeing doesn't matter after that. And nothing as flippant as, we've got apples in the kitchen kind of thing. So I think that's something that is an important thing to call out, and for leaders in the room, but also for those that are dialing in from all sorts of institutions. Definitely reach out or connect or ask, but those meaningful, continual, conversation-based wellbeing elements are so critical. For me, Mara, I mean, that's my perspective. Mara, what would you say?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think if we're not we need to look after ourselves first. We need to make sure that we're, we're sleeping. We need to make sure that we're doing some exercise. We're doing, finding time to do the things that we love as well, that fill us back up, because then we will be better leaders for everybody else. Because we need to lead by example. Take a lunch break, even if it's walk out of your office for 15 minutes or something, but just lead by example for your staff. I think it's really important. And, have a look around. There are lots of resources around for your people, but I think modelling wellbeing is critical, because, people look to leaders. They look to see what their leader's doing, so, and think about what you're saying. I'm busy. And I sort of I'm over the word busy. I've had a really productive day, because it reframes in our head that we haven't been spinning all day.
Yes.
So
such an important word, isn't it? That I'm the same. It is. There's a very negative connotation with that busy. It's a really interesting. That lead by example is so critical, because it is those flippant comments or words or behaviors that we're not thinking. One of the big ones I notice is when I do a lot of work with people, is that being aware of when you are sending emails, being aware of when you are following through or expecting people to join, being really deliberate in when PD days are and what the agenda is and how you're sort of structuring it, because so often those PD days feel like everything about everyone else and nothing about the person. And so I think that leading by example, to show vulnerability, to show self-reflection, to show that the highs and lows of managing those pieces, and being able to use the tools and facilities, IT or otherwise, to sort of set those pieces up.
Yeah, definitely.
Beautiful. What would be your final sort of comment or suggestion around, the authentic purpose of leadership in education, Murray?
Oh, I think it's really important that we actually come as we are and not pretend to be something that we're not to pretend we're a leader 10 years down the track from where we currently are. So be okay to be a bit vulnerable, because we want courage from our people, working with us, to come to us and grow as well, but we need to grow into the leadership role as well. So I think it would be just to encourage you to be yourself in the role. People, staff, you work with professionals. They're not going to, if you said, look, I'm really struggling with this situation, have you a thought around this? They're actually going to admire that more than think that you're weak or you shouldn't be in that position.
Absolutely. That's a great reflection, Murray. For me, I think it is very much around being able to self-reflect and being able to plan forward. So it is being able to see where I'm at, not being so harsh. I think a lot of leaders are so harsh because we come with our heart on our sleeve, so hard on ourselves, and we expect more than is actually attainable. And we hold on to things. And I think we do have to acknowledge that education as a sector is experiencing trauma on an ongoing basis, aligned to the emergency services. And I think leading an organisation that's crisis-based or trauma-centred is very, very different to leading a traditional educational institution where people sit and listen. And so I would call out that for leaders to really, as Peter proposed, connect with that purpose, really understand your people and how your people are your greatest asset, and they're your greatest cost, but they're your greatest asset. And so work through and with people instead of feeling like everything is on your shoulders. So we're going to unpack more of that in the days ahead. We're going to have some fantastic conversations around, how we structure wellbeing and what those elements of wellbeing are. So this afternoon, Andrew Murray's going to dial in. He's an educational leader who's got some wonderful words to share. We're then going to share that element of iceberg theory, so being able to see the unseen. And I think this is a critical one for leaders. And we had an education executive session where we unpacked this iceberg with leaders, and it was fascinating just to watch their responses and reflections when they started to look below that iceberg. So really encourage everyone to come on to that, because that gives you a tool to be tangible in your space. Darren will then talk about how to set that culture of organisational wellbeing before Dr. Chan shares those burnout strategies and how we can actually identify the warning signs more than anything. And then we will wrap up with a very practical session that you can roll out and do with all your staff or your family or your friends, in being able to see where you're at from a wellbeing piece. So I've popped in the chat the links to all of those. You can get everything off our website, but thank you all for joining. Apologies from Wellbeing Australia and apologies from the lovely Peter in terms of being able to dial in today. So we will, as I said, record his session and share it on with you. You will get a survey at the end of the event. Though it was based on a different session, we hope it has been a valuable morning for you. And we really welcome you back at 4 o'clock this afternoon and 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. So have a lovely day, everybody. Take care of yourselves, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks.